Welcome to this week's webinar, everybody. I am joined by the fabulous Andy Donnachie from the CPD Group, and we're going to be diving into how you get your courses accredited. Specifically, when you're a freelancer, how are you getting something that's in your brain accredited so you can potentially earn more money, charge more, or it makes it more desirable to your clients. So I'll be looking after the chat. Any questions, comments, anything like that, bob it in there. I'll hand over to Andy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kim. So yes, hello everybody. My name's Andy Donnachie. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the CPD Group. So we are the only and first and only certified CPD accreditation organization in the world, in fact. So we are certified by the CPD Register, which essentially means that we've kind of been accredited to deliver accreditation services to you guys. Okay, so we're here today. I just really wanted to talk to you about CPD accreditation and also how you can really benefit from having your accreditation in place. And as Kim rightly says, how you can potentially charge more and benefit off the credibility that CPD accreditation offers you. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just quickly pop up my slides and we will go from there. All right, lovely. So please, if anybody does have any questions, just drop them in as we're going along. This is very informal, and I would like to answer everything as we go, just so that you've got the answers that you're looking for, okay? So what we were always trying to tell people, okay, is about positioning your accreditation as a competitive advantage. Because one thing that we are finding massively from all the conversations I'm having with our various customers around the globe is that they are coming to us for accreditation because of the demand from their clients. People are demanding that courses now hold CPD accreditation as a minimum standard to show that there is credibility behind the course, that there is a third-party review that has happened, and, to actually say this course is of a quality standard. Okay, and that's where we come in. That is the services that we offer to people, making sure that there is an independent verification of the quality that sits behind that training. Okay, so the one thing it does is it helps build trust within your learners, your actual kind of client base. It helps the hesitation of their buying by saying, right, this course has actually got a quality mark and it is stamped by the CPD Group and it is definitely of quality. We're finding as well that far more corporate organizations, or even local authorities, when they're putting out tenders or they're, looking to contract in a training provider, they're looking for CPD accreditation as a minimum standard to demonstrate that their funds are going to something that is going to be worthwhile for their learners, their staff, or whoever's actually taking part in the courses. Okay, the one thing it massively does is it differentiates people. One organization has their courses accredited by a credible CPD accreditation organization, and another doesn't. Again, in that corporate space, lots of organizations are moving all of their funds towards accredited training because if there is a kind of a guarantee that there is going to be quality behind that. Okay, and it moves people from that training model, just selling training, to actually validated professional development. Okay, so it's just using the terminology as well when you're looking at your marketing. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about marketing in a moment, but validated professional development, it holds a lot of weight just in its own terminology. And you can actually, guarantee that it is validated professional development when it's been through a rigorous accreditation process. Okay, so at the little strap line at the bottom there, you're not selling a course, you're selling assured quality. Okay, that's what we're here to help provide you guys with. Okay, so you can justify higher pricing through that credibility model. Okay, so by having our stamp, and I can't really speak for all the other organizations out there, but the CPD Group, I understand our message, I understand our methods, okay, and our processes behind the scenes that go into the actual reviewing and assessing of courses and the quality therein. Okay, so it is an instant credibility and authority stamp when you hold the CPD accreditation mark from ourselves. Okay, they can see that when you're promoting your courses as having that label attached to it, that is more valuable and more reliable. So the training that I'm going to be taking part in is going to be, an excellent piece of learning for me as a professional, whichever role or organization I choose. Okay, so and CPD credits, being able to actually offer somebody validated CPD credits offers that additional value as well. So it's showing people that, lots of professionals have a mandated number of CPD hours or credits that they must attain every single year for their professional body or, their employer, whoever it might be that's mandating that. So being able to offer those CPD credits and giving a very clear guidance to the individuals taking part that you're going to be able to log X amount of CPD credits from taking part in this piece of learning and put it towards your professional portfolio. Okay, so that higher price comes, you can justify in offering it because the training is trusted, it's assessed, and it's professionally recognized and holds the CPD credit value for people to actually, again, put in their professional portfolios. So marketing is a big part of what training companies must do, obviously. Okay, so what I'm always saying to people is to market the fact that you hold accreditation. Okay, because it's extremely important that people understand the process you've been through, right? So what I like to say to people is, the actual value of CPD accreditation is as much in the process of having your work accredited as it is in the resulting accreditation stamp and CPD credits that are assigned. Being able to actually voice to people, what you've been through, the actual process your course has been through, the rigorous nature of the assessment from our assessors and the review and feedback that they potentially have provided you with, okay, and the actions that you had to take to meet our accredited framework so that the accreditation was granted. That whole process in itself offers that visible proof, okay, that you have been through a rigorous process, and it's not just a stamp of approval, just a logo that you're sticking on your website. There is a valid process and a rigorous process behind the scenes that you have invested in, okay, because CPD accreditation is an investment. It is something for you, to make the decision to go through the process to gain that accreditation at the end, to be able to use it in your marketing to your advantage. Okay, so when we accredit courses, we provide a variety of different logos. Everything, again, we work closely with the CPD register. So we submit all of your accredited activities onto the register. So it's about telling people about the verified nature of their certificates when they actually receive a certificate. It's been able to say to them, look, see these logos that are attached to my marketing materials, they have value, they mean something. Go and have a look at the register, validate that my accreditation is in place and it's come from the CPD group before you even enroll on my course. So it gives people that trust and it builds that relationship with them, and it gives them a visible and provable way of actually being able to say this course is of quality and it's worth my investment of my money to take part in. Okay, so I just tell this to everybody: make your accreditation visible everywhere. So on your website, get it on the homepage, get it on your course pages, the About You section, the signature of your emails, get your approved provider logo in there to demonstrate to everybody that you are associated with ourselves. Okay, get the social media ads going. Let everybody know to go to visit the register, have a look and verify my accreditation. Shouting about your accreditation, I personally feel, is a extremely strong asset in your organization. So you're able to really promote yourselves as being not only a top quality training provider, but you've put your money where your mouth is, and you've actually gone to, to actually get that third party validation. And again, as we were just talking about earlier, Kim, is that we have no skin in the game when it comes to your training courses. You've may have been working on this for a long, long time, and developing your course, but having that fresh pair of eyes come in and review the course to make sure that everything is there, that the learning journey is suitable for the target audience that it's aimed towards, and that the industry kind of knowledge that's within it is actually substantial enough for that individual to be taking part and to actually come out with a valuable certificate at the end of it. Okay, so we say to everybody, promote your accreditation as far and wide as you possibly can, because it is one of your strongest assets once you've actually gained that accreditation stamp from ourselves. And that is all about repetition, as I put down at the bottom there. And repetition builds trust. When people start to see that your logos are being put everywhere and you're quite open about going to the public register to actually, verify these things, you're putting, again, your money where your mouth is and saying, go and have a look, don't just take my word for it. Go and see the register and make sure that you're happy with what you're purchasing here. Again, that relationship building, that trust building can only help in producing more financially, because you'll be generating a bigger kind of an audience out there. Okay, so sell the certificate and not just a course. Another thing we like to say, that these certificates are actually valuable. Okay, now you design your own certificate. We provide you with the logos to go on there that have all your registered accreditation identification numbers that, again, are on the CPD register. So it's about promoting those verified certificates so your employer can trust it, your professional body can trust it. It's a permanent record of learning. It's something that will help you benefit in your career. It will help you develop. Okay. And it is a really strong part of what your sales team should be looking at, or yourself if you're working on your own. Emphasize shareability and professional recognition. Okay. So I'm always saying to everybody again, get your certificates on LinkedIn, show people what you've been doing, shout about it yourself if you're the learner, because again, I've been through a top quality training course, and that is evidenced by the CPD register listing, by the training organization's own publicity, the website, all of the logos everywhere. So it all ties up quite nicely when either the learners having their CPD record audited, or a professional body is looking into the actual training providers that are supplying into their industry. All of these things add weight to your credibility and to your saleability. Okay, so people aren't just buying learning, they're buying career evidence and professional credibility. Okay, so there's another element there which is really, really important about CPD accreditation that I think a lot of people miss. Okay, so just to summarize, I didn't want to go on too long, so I made this short and sharp. Okay, so build trust instantly by getting CPD accredited. Differentiate from your competitors, massive. Justify offering higher prices for your training because you've been through this rigorous process to actually present your courses in the way that they are. Repeat customers by just constantly showing them that you're accredited, and hopefully that you're designing your courses in such a way where there's a progression route for those individuals so that they will keep coming back to you, because not only was your learning fantastic, the credibility side of it is there between them and their employer and their professional organizations that they're assigned to. Okay, so hopefully that will help generate more income in the future for you guys by bringing those people back to you. Okay, and sell career outcomes, not just training. So this is about saying this is going to benefit your career. All right, this is training that you need, and it is verified as being of a quality standard. Okay, so I'll leave it right there. So I don't want to just gabble on too much. Okay, but please, if you've got any questions, even if it's off topic from here, please do fire away. I'm happy to answer them all for you.
Thank you very much. Whistle stop. So we've got a few questions in the chat which can dig into. Okay. So what do you think specifically prompts corporations to ask for the accreditation? Is it bad experience? Do you have any stories or any examples that you can share?
Well, the couple of examples we've had recently is essentially, the person making the decision to buy in training generally isn't the purse string holder. So they need to be able to justify upstairs that what they're putting the company's money into is going to be of value to the staff and to the company as a whole. Okay, so that is what's generally driving that kind of conversation, is people saying, look, we need some kind of verification that the funds that we're going to be spending is going to be spent on something proper and something that is going to be of value. So they look for an accreditation mark. Okay, it's the way that they can do it without actually having to go into the training course itself and then do a whole mapping exercise against the roles that they're actually looking to train. So the accreditation mark for a corporate organization, we are finding, is the go-to. It's what they're looking for, and it's again, it's to justify funds in the main.
Okay. Does that answer, Anna? Okay. Right. So next one. So. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. It does. It answers.
Smash it. Okay. So next one from Natalie. Do CPD credits hold value for those that aren't in a professional role? For example, if a client who delivers suicide prevention for young people, training to young people, mentors, parents, guardians, how would us getting it CPD accredited benefit them?
Absolutely. So those that are in a professional capacity, with their professional bodies, for example, that I mentioned earlier, that they get mandated a certain number of hours that they must do. Now, in terms of CPD accreditation for, because we do a lot of courses where young people are taking part, so they don't have that professional connection. Okay, but what they are able to demonstrate in terms of the employability agenda and their CV building is, the CPD credit, just for those people that don't know, is basically worked out on 1 hour of participation is 1 CPD credit. So that's the UK standard. Okay, so what you're demonstrating by collecting those CPD credits is not only, the subject that you've been taking part in has been validated and it's of a quality standard, but also the amount of time that you've put into your professional development, or, just your learning in general. Okay, so people are able to demonstrate that, yes, I'm keeping up to date, or I'm getting involved, I want to learn. And, being able to demonstrate that from a young person perspective is massive in today's kind of employability sorts of arena. Trying to get that young person into a job role, been able to demonstrate that I've been attending CPD accredited training throughout, my youth, it's only a positive for those people in terms of, I mean, again, when I'm looking at CVs myself, I'm looking for people's CPD, what they've been doing outside of their base qualifications, because it's interesting to me to see what they've been looking to study themselves as much as what they've had to study through their base qualifications in university, for example. So I am always looking for people's CPD, and outside of what they've actually studied originally, what have they been looking into? What types of subjects are they interested in, and what kind of learning have they been taking part in? So yeah, I personally believe that having all courses accredited is a wonderful thing, not just for the CPD credits on delivery, but the fact that you're actually having it verified, the actual content itself is quality.
I suppose from a marketing perspective as well, if it's a toss-up between an accredited course and a non-accredited course that are both exactly the same content, exactly the same price, and all of the parameters are exactly the same, in my head, I'm going to be like, well, that one's got an extra badge on it. That one's been validated. That one's gone through a review. That one's whatever. So I think from a marketing perspective, it makes sense because it's got that added sellability value.
Completely agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it offers you that extra tool within your marketing as well, So when you're out there projecting that course in front of your competitor, it's not just you shouting, my course is great. You have a partner shouting beside you that this course is great. So don't take their word for it only. We're saying this too. So it puts you in a really strong position in terms of that competitor piece.
Okay. Thank you. Does that help, Natalie?
It does. It does. I think I guess I was coming less from a position of people who are young people trying to work their way up the ladder, because I get that point completely. It was more about people who aren't trying to do that, that are like their guardians, their mentors, their people. These people that are receiving this training are on the edge. They're on the edge.
Yeah, I understand.
And it's not about a job or a career path. It's about actually just surviving and living. So why should they care about whether the course is CPD accredited? Is where I was coming from.
In terms of the delivery for courses like that, I mean, I generally find that they're funded by local authorities or this kind of thing. So in terms of the accreditation for that kind of course, it helps with that funding. Yeah. Because it's saying to the local authority, you know what I mean, that this course has been rigorously reviewed. So what you're funding here is worthwhile.
That's a really good point, actually. That particular point is super helpful. And I don't disagree either, by the way, about if I've got something that's accredited and not accredited, and it's got a badge and a kite mark of quality, and it has as Kim was saying, like that. Makes absolute sense.
For the badge every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the credibility piece is probably just as viable for these people to go, actually, it's not just anyone delivering this course, it's somebody who's gone through this rigorous process. And so I'm not going to steal any more of your time, but my other question that I haven't written, and maybe it'll come out of other questions that have come up, is what that rigor looks like, what sort of process people would that my client go through to get their course accredited, because that's also important, right? That
of course it is. Yeah, I mean, ultimately what we're looking for in terms of course assessment, right, is for you to submit everything that you're going to be using. Right, and I mean everything from your lesson plans right the way through to your assessments, the answers and the questions that you'll be using, or the format of assessment. If there is assessment, I mean, not all training has. We're aware of that. Okay, so it's about, we need to see everything that individual learner is going to be, the journey they're going to be on. We need to see that the learning outcomes are, if there's a particular kind of role that the course is designed to actually feed and serve, then we need to understand what that role is and what industry they operate in, so that we can make sure the learning outcomes are fit for purpose for that individual person. All right, so we're looking at everything, and it's quite a difficult one to put your finger on straight away, because every course is different. And it might be that you're delivering a health and safety course, so is the next company, but they're slightly different courses. Even though they've got the same kind of objective, the learning outcomes are slightly different because they're tailored to a different industry, or they're tailored to a different organization, because it's quite a bespoke piece of learning. So there's just a lot of variables. But what our assessment team do is we have our accredited framework, which is published on our website. Okay, so what we're looking for is not just about the content. We're doing a 360 kind of holistic review of the entire learning journey from enrollment through to certification, right? So we're looking at the bigger picture, right? We're looking at what accessibility measures, for example, that you can put in place for people with additional needs that might be coming on the training. We're looking at, we're not expecting people to drastically change their course, just to fit our needs as such. But there are certain, things that we do expect to see in place before we'll go anywhere near providing accreditation. But, every company is different. As I say, it might be that, somebody delivers on the fourth floor of a building and they can't have wheelchair access, for example, just in terms of one accessibility piece. All right. So we're not expecting that company to move building just to fit our purposes, So we're realistic about these things, but we do have to make sure that the measure's there from start to finish. And we do use the acronym accredited, which for obvious reasons, so there's various elements. And within that is the content of the course. Okay. So we are looking at, we use all sorts of frameworks, whether it's qualification specifications, whether it's apprenticeship kind of trailblazer frameworks, all of these kind of things, national occupational standards for like courses that potentially don't have a qualification that is in that arena, and we're looking at all the various things that we can have access to so that we can actually make a measure and stick and say, right, this course is up to standard for that particular industry or that particular job role. Okay, so there's lots of different things, but again, it's very difficult to pinpoint it because, again, it's such a vast thing.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I'll have a look at the accredited
framework. Please do. Yeah, it's all on there.
That's great.
And we've done. I've recorded it. You'll probably get sick of my face and my voice, to be honest. I've recorded lots of little videos to put next to each element of the framework to help break down exactly what we are looking for.
Okay, great.
I just shared the link to that in the chat because
lovely. Thank you.
So Anna's question is tied to Natalie's. So the credits, do they apply for specific courses or at the organizational level? So if someone creates a new course, do we need to certify each one?
Every single course needs to be reviewed and assessed on its own merit. Absolutely. Okay. And then each individual course is assigned a particular number of CPD credits. Okay. So we work with the organization who submitted the course to kind of show us in their interpretation, how many hours or how long do you think an average person would take to complete your course? Okay, from there, we're using the lesson plans that are submitted to have a breakdown of how those learning outcomes are achieved and over what period of time, and then our assessors will be going through the course from start to finish as if they were following the program. Okay, so ultimately what they're doing is making a judgment call themselves as to how many hours should be applied. And if there is a big kind of difference between what the provider thinks it's worth and what we think it's worth, then there'll be a conversation directly with our assessor asking for justification for those hours. Or, in many times we've had to tell people that there is no possible way you're going to get through all of this learning in the 2 hours that you've suggested. So we're going to have to look at putting up your CPD credits or your hours to justify this amount of learning, because on average, you're not going to get through that in 2 hours, So it's a swings and roundabout sort of discussion. But the one thing to keep in mind as well is when you submit a course through to us for review and it's been reviewed and a feedback provided, is you can book a time with your assessor at any point to have a quick chat about that feedback so they can justify what they're asking. And again, it's a two-way street. You might have pure justification as to why we shouldn't be doing, or adding a piece of material which our assessor might have suggested. There might be a really good reason why you don't think it's appropriate. Have that conversation with your assessor and then you'll come to an agreement towards the end of that.
Thank you. I had a follow-up question, Andy, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
So in terms of formats for the accreditation, and this is quite frankly me being new to the industry, can I have in-person training and curriculum approved for CPD, or is it purely e-learning courses?
It's any kind of learning. I mean, if you, again, please visit our website and have a look at this, because we look at learning and CPD in quite a different way to a lot of different organizations. Okay, so we see any form of learning being shared in any format as being continuous professional development. It doesn't have to be in a classroom, okay, or an online training portal, okay, because a podcast, you can sit down and listen to a podcast and it be the most educational piece that you've been involved in the last 10 years. Okay, so why shouldn't that be recognized in the same way as an online training course? So we do review podcasts, webinars, Okay, we can have CPD webinars where, lots of valuable information is being shared with people. We can accredit those as well. Okay, so anything that has a learning value to it, we are prepared to review it in terms of CPD. And if it's suitable for accreditation, we will provide accreditation for it. And because of webinars and all these different kind of mechanisms and formats, we have different mechanisms internally for you to be able to distribute your CPD accredited certificates. Say for a webinar, for example, if we had this accredited today, Kim, what we could do is provide you with a QR code that you would simply put up on the, whenever all the talking's done, and just ask the participants to scan the QR code, and they'll be able to download a branded certificate of your own that kind of demonstrates their participation in today's webinar, and it would allocate them their CPD credits for being here.
Yeah, I mean, we do it for Free Spirits Live, don't we, for the conference?
Absolutely.
We've had that accredited. And when there's things to consider when you're accrediting an event like that. Like in October, we had an individual QR code for each session, which was a freaking nightmare. So, so in March this time, we were just like, okay, you attended the conference, here's your certificate. Thank you very much. So there's considerations.
On that very note, Kim, we've taken that feedback from yourself plus others, because you're not the only one who's told us that. So there are literally, yesterday I was sitting with our developer going through the event side of our system. So we're developing something in that area where there'll only be one QR code, but it will link to all the various certificates for each of the various seminars that you delivered. So you wouldn't have a separate QR code. It would be the same one up there. And then every time someone scans it, it will be by time of your seminar schedule. It will develop a different certificate for each individual seminar, governed off the one QR. That's the plan.
That sounds fancy. Because after having to send each speaker their own QR code on a thing and be like, okay, remember to share this, and then having to do it all in Slack, I was just like, no, sod it. I'm just going to have one that I can just send to everybody. And, so it's easier for me and, speakers.
We're very open to people giving us information to work upon, okay? Because we need to develop, we need to keep up with things, and you guys are at the forefront of everything. So if we don't hear this kind of feedback from you guys, we probably never will. So we take it on board, and we integrate it wherever we can into what we're doing.
Cracking. Andy, so you had a couple of questions as well?
Yeah, put your granular hat on, because I've got a client sat on my shoulder that I'm working with at the moment, and you talk about the holistic approach, the user journey. They are producing SCORM content effectively, and modules maybe 4.5 hours, broken into. A course is 4.5 hours broken into separate modules. They want to get it accredited. However, the content they produce will be running on their clients' LMS platforms. So literally, they are just producing a SCORM zip file, providing it to the client with all the synopsis and all the associated documents. So in that situation, they don't have an LMS, so they can't present it to you as a fully formed piece of experience. How do you go about measuring that?
Yeah, I mean, a SCORM file, if I understand rightly, they are visible, are they not, prior to being on the LMS?
They need to be on an LMS for you to see them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do they have the kind of, the actual original documentation for the content that went into the SCORM files? Like PDF
in fact, they could provide you with a link to look at it as a piece of individual content. What you won't experience is the user experience.
Usability. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in that respect, if that's the mechanism that they've got, we'll have to work with that, and we're happy to do so. Because it might not be the final usability, but what we're still able to measure is that the content is up to scratch, if you know what I mean, and the learning journey itself, the learning outcomes are being met and where they're being met. All of that kind of information can still be fully reviewed. So if that's the case, or if they are able to pull it off into PDF and submit it to us in that way, whatever works really. Obviously the final kind of result on the LMS would be the preference, so the class not possible. Then we have to work within those confines. So yeah, more than happy to receive it in any kind of format that our assessor is able to kind of review the content in the main.
Yeah, generally software tools to build content like that do have a kind of a review link.
Review piece.
That you provide to the client anyway for them to review it, to approve it. So Okay.
We'll be happy to work with that.
So here's something very interesting. They're going to be producing content that is updated on a monthly basis.
Right.
And the reason being the content is based on a technology that literally is changing every day. So effectively, the link you get on day one is not going to be what the experience the learner's going to be having 2 months, 3 months down the line. How can that be managed?
Yeah, every single course that we accredit, right, because we have our own bespoke portal where all of your, once you become an approved provider with us, it gets you an account on there. That's a useful resource that people might find handy in there, all free of charge, by the way. And all of your accreditations are managed through that system. So once you submit a course to us, it's fully reviewed by your assessor through that portal. Once accreditation is granted, there's a facility on every single course to manage the materials. So we encourage people to update things for us as and when they change, because it's important for the integrity of the accreditation that we are seeing the most up-to-date thing that is being delivered by that individual organization. Okay, so the one thing to consider is we are happy to do that review free of charge if it's just a change because of what you're talking about. The tools are updating. Okay, but if it changes the learning outcomes of a course, that's when we need it submitted as a separate entity, because it's not the same course anymore. Does that make sense? I mean, the way I like to describe it to people in its most simplest form is if we've accredited a square and you add something to it or take something off it, it's no longer a square, it's become a rectangle. Okay, so we didn't accredit a rectangle, we accredited a square. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And to be honest with you, the structure of the course will remain the same. It's really just updating the content to be more up to date. And the reason the structure will remain the same is what I don't want is one learner in January to go through and do a bit of learning and answer 10 questions and get 80%. And then a learner in August has to go through 20 questions or 30 questions to get 80%. So yeah, it's really just the nomenclature and the text and maybe some of the imagery that will be updated.
Lovely. Just submit that through to us through that kind of facility, that update facility. And what that'll do is that'll submit through to your same assessor that originally assessed it in the first place. And they will just do a judgment call off the back of it, whether this course still remains the same, is it still of value, do that kind of stuff behind the scenes. And then, because we class that as what a version 2 of the course, then it become a version 3, then it become a version 4, this kind of thing. And then, your assessor will just sign that off. You probably won't even know it's happened.
Brilliant. And that brings me on to the third of my 2 questions. How long does the accreditation last? Is it an annual thing? Is it just for the life?
But it's what you do is you buy an accreditation contract from us. So that's either for 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months. Okay. Right. Now, then you submit your courses. Let's imagine that you went for 36 months. You submitted, your first few courses at the front end, got those accredited. They've all got 36 months accreditation. Even if you were 24 months into your 36-month contract, you could still submit courses if you've got available slots. And those courses will still get 36 months accreditation, regardless of how long it's taken you to submit them. Okay, now that is only fair. And, you've got to get the value for the money that you're paying us. So that's the way that we look at that. Okay, so you submit courses to us, we accredit them. And whatever your contracted period is, you get that amount of time for that course accreditation. So ultimately, you could have stopped paying your contract because you've completed all of your payments, but your courses still have valid CPD accreditation running for X amount of time after the fact.
That's great. Thank you for that. That's really handy to know.
And just to put in there as well, one of the things that we do with all providers is after 36 months, so whether you had a 12-month contract, and then another 24 months contract, after 3 years of your course holding accreditation with us, we do a mandatory review of that course internally. Okay, and that's to make sure after a 3-year period, kind of, the kind of qualification sort of remit, that every 3 years you kind of renew your qualification. We have a look at every 3 years at people's training courses to make sure that they are still fit for purpose, because it might be that a piece of legislation has changed in that time or whatever, and the course refers directly to the old piece. So we need to make sure that review is done on a 3-year cycle. So again, that's free of charge. It's all part of the accreditation plan in the first place. So what we do is if there are any kind of edits or changes that need to be made to your course, our external auditor will contact the organization, let them know that there's a piece of information that we need updating, and then they'll resubmit that, make sure it's up to date, and again, we sign it off. And that, again, is just to maintain the integrity of the accreditation, to make sure that everything's being delivered to the public that holds our brand, and holds our logos, is fit for purpose.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay. Question in from Natalie, which is, I'm thinking, and it's a good one for the question that I had in my head. First off, how long does it take, let's say, for a half-day course to do start to finish? And how much would something like that cost, roughly?
Yes.
I know it's a how long's a piece of string answer, and it's the same thing that we give people, but ballpark.
Absolutely. In ballpark, in terms of time frames, we are looking on average, it takes us to get a course submitted to us and then into the hands of an assessor to be reviewed 2 to 3 weeks. From that review point, again, that's when how long's a piece of string come into it, because it could be that the course is massive, it's complex, or it could be the half-day course you mentioned. Okay, but once the assessor's done all of the reviewing and fed back potentially through the system, then it's very much dependent on how quickly people action those requests from the assessors, and these kind of things. So, in reality, 2 to 3 weeks to be able to get it reviewed, okay, and then however long for it to be complete between you and your assessor. In terms of cost, please do share the link to, there's a cost calculator on our website. So you can basically just use the little slider and then just, it will show you all the different breakdowns, if you go onto the website, Kim, it's at the top under CPD activities. And then go to,
okay. Okay, so CPD activities.
Then onto courses.
And then
just get quote.
Get quote.
And then you'll see the slider. And what it does is you can put the slider onto as many courses as you need. There's the 12, 24, 36 month options there. And then underneath that, it will show you the various payment options that are available for those contracts. So it's all very transparent right from the start. And those are the only costs you pay. There's no additional costs that creep up out of nowhere.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of the plans as well. It's like future proofing. That's the way we're looking at it. So if you have 5 courses, but you don't currently have 5 courses, but you have a 5-course contract, the fact that you can then just submit them anytime within that contract and get the full accreditation term out of them means that you can, get a plan, get your finances sorted right at the beginning, and then just start feeding courses in as and when you're creating them throughout the term. Or you can just simply upgrade as and when you're going along.
Yeah. I have a question about accessibility.
Yes.
So let's say that I was doing this, I'm going to say half-day leadership development course, let's say for argument's sake. It's face-to-face, it's got a precursor video, which is sent via email, it's got some reflection activities, a physical workbook, and then it's got a 10-question assessment at the end of it, which is done through an LMS. So that gives you a picture of what I'm thinking.
Yep.
If I design that with no accessibility in mind, so the video doesn't have captions, images don't have alt text for online things, all of this kind of stuff, the workbook is done in font size 8, which nobody can read unless they have reading glasses. So if I go to it completely ignorant of any accessibility guidelines, would your assessors call me out on it?
Yes. And they will ask you to consider these things, because it's important. You see, what we're here to do as well, right, is we're not here to be, swinging a stick at you. We're here as a partner to work with you, right? So ultimately, your accreditation is what I was saying earlier in the little presentation, is about helping you promote you, right? And helping you promote your courses as being the best they possibly can be, right? So our assessors are not here to be like obstructive. It's to be constructive, to actually help you and by being ignorant to all those things, you're limiting your marketplace, so you're not opening the door to as many clients as you possibly can by having those restrictions in place. So yes, they will feed back to you and say, have you considered, or, would you do this? It's not something we'd probably fail you on throughout the accreditation process as such. but it would be something that they would highly recommend that you consider, because it's for your own benefit and for, you know, your reputation out there in the marketplace, as well as, again, trying to get as many clients through the door as you possibly can by having those accessibility measures in place.
Okay, good answer. Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? I mean, I have questions for days, but anyway, it's not about me.
No, not for me. I think I need to have a really good look at the website and have a think about, because this is twofold for me. One is obviously for my own business, so I have a learning development business, but also I have a client I mentioned that is also, I've been working with her for about nearly a year actually, looking at accreditation, and we were going down one route and that route isn't viable. And so it just was very timely that this call came up. I was chatting to Kim and Andy the other day and it was like, oh my God.
Lovely.
So I just need to make sure it's the right solution for them.
Of course,
but
I'm more than happy to pick this up outside of here.
Yeah, that might be good actually, Andy, and might be really worth me getting her involved in that conversation, seeing whether this you know, it's a fit. But it's been really useful. So thank you.
Something in the diary.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So, okay, I had this idea pop into my head. So let's say that I create something that has a big boo-boo in there. So it's not wrong. It's maybe just something of an unpopular opinion, or it's something that is, you know, not well thought of in normal situations.
Yeah.
What would your assessors do? Would it be something that you could accredit if you're thinking this is potentially offensive to people? Or would you just be like, no, okay, here's your money back. Thank you very much.
We've had to do it. We've had to do it on more than one occasion. Absolutely, yeah. And you see, we have a very kind of strong ethical position, you know, and yes, we understand that people have opinions and people have different belief systems to us. I mean, we did a course which was about the spiritual nature of the cocoa bean. All right. So it's not offensive, but it's just something that none of us internally here have any real form of belief in, you know, so we don't know it, you know, until we kind of went through this course, and we all sat down together and talked about this one, because it was slightly off kilter, if that makes sense. So, but we can't not accredit that because somebody has a different belief system to us.
Yeah.
But in terms of, we did have a course where they were quoting a very well-known individual, who is not what we would say is the nicest person on the planet that's ever been. And they were quoting it in, you know, and actually using it as reference and things like that. So I won't go into the detail of that, because it was actually quite horrifying, to be quite honest, that they were looking to have this accredited and publicly deliver it. So in that instance, what we did is we refused the accreditation. We explained very clearly why we wouldn't accredit it. It's in our terms and conditions as well. If there's anything that goes against our ethical values and things like that, you know, we will give you your money back. So that contract was just terminated at that point because they weren't willing to work with us, you know, in terms of actually having that course adjusted, you know. So they, we just had to cut that contract up and give them their money back.
Yeah. See, that's like super reassuring that, because it adds that value to getting the accreditation, knowing that the accessibility is going to be on point. You are essentially validating that everybody is saying something that is good and warm and fuzzies, rather than it being something that is potentially damaging, you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you look at it from a business perspective, we can't associate ourselves with these kind of messages being delivered under our brand, you know. So we have to be very careful from that. But again, it's more of an ethical and a moral thing, you know, that we will not be accrediting things like that. You know, it's not right, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I guess I've got another question now. So let's say half a day's training is 2 to 3 weeks for accreditation. How I want to say the word invasive, but that sounds horrible. But how much of my time is needed during those 2 to 3 weeks? I'm assuming it isn't. There it is, and sit and wait for my certificate to arrive.
Yeah, because you mentioned rigorous several times, Andy.
Yes, it's more than likely not. It's very rarely that we actually have no comments to make on a piece of training that comes in. Okay. Now, and that might be just inquisitive, that your assessor is just trying to get clarity. It might be that there is massive omissions from your course that need to be kind of updated. For example, we had a health and safety course come through to us that had no health and safety in it. It was quite bizarre. So there's a lot of work our assessor, even though it's only a small health and safety course, there was a lot of work our assessor needed to do there by pointing out to this company that we need this, and this for these reasons. So there's always justification as to why we're asking for things as well. They'll always kind of give you that information to say why it's necessary to have X, Y, or Z in your course. Excuse me. But again, that's very much dependent on the standard of the course that we get, Andy. Because if there's only a couple of tweaks here, or there's a bit of a spelling issue on a particular page, things like that, then it's obviously not going to take long to make those amendments. But if it's big kind of chunks of courses missing, or that there's a lot of kind of ambiguous language being used, and our assessors need to kind of establish what that is actually trying to share, then they take a little bit longer.
Okay.
So it's a difficult one to give you a definite answer for, I'm afraid.
No, I understand.
Excuse me.
Silencio, por favor.
Yes.
See, which is, from an assessor's point of view, what can we do to make their job easier? Because I know it's going to be like, well, package things, but it's like, do you want like an overview of?
I wish everyone would ask that question. Right.
How can we make their life easier?
Yes. Right. So if you think about it, the easier the life is for the assessor, the quicker the accreditation gets turned around. That's ultimately the goal. Right. So when you're actually applying to have a course accredited, there's an application form for each course. Within that application form, it addresses every element of that accredited framework, which is why we ask people to get familiar with the framework before they start filling in their application, so that they understand what questions are coming, essentially. You must also remember that your assessor, as I mentioned earlier as well, has no skin in the game, and it has no understanding of this course until the moment they open it, all right, and have a read of it. So the more that you can put in that application to describe how it's delivered, if there's anything that you think is slightly different to a traditional classroom delivery model, for example, that might be useful for the assessor to understand, to contextualize what they're reading, it would be really helpful for them to understand it. And then ultimately that would lead to less questions coming back to you. So if there is as much information in there as possible, your assessors can sit down and go, I know what they mean by that, right? And then they can work it out from there. Then there'll be less coming back to you. So less feedback, less backwards and forwards, and your accreditation will be smoother and ultimately quicker. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Super. I mean, thing is, you want to be kind of mates with your assessor, because if you piss your assessor off, it's just going to be a nightmare. Not that they would be biased or anything like that.
Of course they wouldn't.
Of course not.
I agree. It sounds like there's a checklisty kind of thing that you just described there, Andy, in terms of, that whole packaging it up and submitting it. Is that something that comes through in your accredited framework that you mentioned before? Like, is there something that says, look, these are your 10 things, make sure these are all in place, and it'll kind of help you get there quicker or more smoothly?
I wouldn't say yes to that, to be honest, right? But if get familiar with the framework is the first thing I would say, as I mentioned, right? Because then you'll understand what we're looking at, what kind of things our assessors are trying to establish about your training course, if you know what I mean. Like accessibility, again, is a good example. Because we find as well, when people have a look at the framework, when they come to their actual applications, they've got a different mindset around how they're filling it in. Because they're understanding, right, the assessor's making me think about, right, oh, okay, I see what they mean. I can do this if, different color paper, for example, and different font sizes, and, all these kind of things I hadn't generally considered before. They can only help my delivery and my training course and my marketing of it, So definitely get familiar with that. But I can't say it's a checklist, unfortunately. That would be dead easy, wouldn't it?
You would, wouldn't it?
Take that, submit.
Yeah.
As if but once you read the framework, I mean, none of it's rocket science what we're asking within it. We're looking about the author, for example. If you are the author of a piece of learning, we need to understand that you're qualified to be an author in that subject area. Things like that, just simple things. But it's again thinking about that and having a look at every element of that framework to make sure that that you've got everything covered when you're filling that application.
Can I ask a question on the back of that? Sorry.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Just from a so I'm again my client in my head. They are experts in their field, first and foremost. Training deliverers second. They're more than capable. I've been working with them for a while, but they don't necessarily hold training qualifications. They hold the qualifications in their subject area. How does that play out in terms of being accredited and fitting into what your requirements are?
What we're looking at here specifically is the learning. Okay, so the learning has been authored by an expert in their field who's qualified to do so. That's what we're looking at with the course accreditation. We have a separate trainer's accreditation for those individuals that wish to actually have themselves as an individual tutor or educator accredited. Okay, so what we're looking at is when we accredit a course, for us, we're not here to tell you how to run your business. All right, so once your course is accredited, it's entirely the responsibility of the organization to have somebody qualified delivering it. So that's your job ultimately. Not
exactly. I agree. Okay. Okay, that's great. That's super helpful.
I've just thought of a question while everybody else is thinking of another, because we've got like 8 minutes left. It's coming really quick. Okay, so feel free to not answer if you don't want. I can always clip this bit out. Is the accreditation process purely human, or do you bring in AI?
No, we do not use AI, right? And I can categorically say that. And the reason I say that is we have a non-disclosure agreement with every single one of our organizations that come in. All right, so it protects their intellectual property. Now, from my understanding of AI, there is a very good chance that your property would end up in the public domain through an AI machine. Okay, so might not be directly sourceable, but it will be out there in the public domain. So we do not use AI. It is 100% human behind the scene in terms of assessment. That's categorical. And we can't break the non-disclosure agreement. We can get into a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah. Okay, that's very reassuring.
Good. I'm glad. But it is. Yes, because AI it's only as good as the people that are filling it. And
yeah. See, what would you do if your assessor came to you and was like, I can tell that this is just churned out by GPT. They've even left on if you want me to write this in a different way, please let me know at the bottom, which we've seen in articles and things. Would they pull that out?
It's our biggest obstacle at this point in time as the CPD accreditation organization. We literally have, as you just rightly said, people putting the title in of a course and you can tell exactly what they've said. Can you write me a learning manual based on this title? And it's just a whole list of bullet points with the little brackets that are saying it would be good to talk to your learners about this here, things like that. And they've not even removed it. So they've not even read it. Okay. So this is, exactly right. But this is our biggest challenge, because if you consider what we want is what you mentioned earlier, Kim, the applications are properly full, all this really useful information for our assessors to be able to get a real good idea of the course that they're assessing, etc., to help speed up that process. When we get that kind of submission, our assessors have to go through it from top to bottom as they would in any other course, but then they need to go into so much detail. The amount of work they have to put into one of those courses just to explain to the individual why this is not suitable. This is not training. This is not learning materials. This is bullet points about what training materials should be submitted to us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the bane of our existence at the moment is ChatGPT and others.
I can get that. And I mean, you see it everywhere. And the thing is, if you're using it well and you're using it responsibly and you are checking things, it can be the best,
absolutely,
co-worker. But crapping gives you crap out. And if you're just thinking that you can pass it off and charge loads of mega money, it's just...
Well, this is it. I mean, I've done a few talks on this over the recent time, actually, talking about how AI is a fantastic tool, right? And you see those bullet points that it laid out on that particular piece of material, a fantastic learning journey. The skeleton's there, but the expert is still the tutor or the person authoring the course. They need to be involved, you know, they need to make sure that they are putting the meat on those bones. And because they're the one who's going to be delivering it ultimately as well, we find out in the main that the person submitting it to us is also the person who's going to be delivering it. You know, so they've got their own personal touch they need to put onto that piece of training. So having the machine do it takes all of that away. You know, it takes all of that kind of like that feeling that people put into their training. It takes that away from it completely. And again, you know, the expertise comes from the people, not from the machine.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. So we've got time for one more question.
I've learned
Lovely
a lot
job.
from this.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Good.
Every time we chat, Andy, I learn something new about
Good,
things.
good. I'm glad.
And I have had
All
two
that
conversations.
means I didn't cover it properly the first time.
But I've had two conversations with my clients this week. And I'm like, if you want to get your stuff CPD accredited, because I'm doing the design work for them, I'm like, I know a guy. So that actually does give me a question. If I refer a client to you and they buy a plan to get their courses accredited, I might be designing, I might not. Do you do a kickback?
I'm afraid not. No, you see, one of the things that we've got in place is our certification with the CPD register. You know, so there are certain demands that put upon us through that where we must remain impartial, completely independent.
Yes.
You know, this kind of thing. So those kind of things are a little bit grey.
Yeah.
So
but you would maybe get a bit of extra merch at a conference or something.
No, unfortunately, because the thing is as well, is we are working alone solely with that organization, you know what I mean? So our relationship then develops with that company that you maybe refer to us, you know, so and then we treat them as, you know, a very independent individual organization and work with them solely in that kind of regard.
Yeah. Thing is, it's a good thing to be aware of, like, especially as a freelancer. But I think the amount that you have covered in this past hour has been astronomical.
Yep.
So yeah, massive thank you from me.
Yeah, me.
Brilliant. Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, but the thing is again, you know, we're not just limited to this kind of arena. Come and speak to us. You know, my name's Andy, as you know. So if you need us, give us a ring. All the information's on the website. If you just want my direct email, instead of info@thecpd.group, just stick Andy and I'm available anytime.
Cracking. Well, thank you very, very much. And thank you everybody for joining us today, or anyone that's listening in.